Welcome back. Well, the markets are placid. A good start for the bank nifty and the mid caps, but top indexes just about quiet, which gives us a little time to ponder over the macro ecosystem. Now, some of the macro data that we got for the month of November could be interpreted as a tad worrying. Gross tax collections actually dipped in November 22 compared to November 21, just by a smidge, but they dipped. And they were pulled down by a fall in corporate taxes. Corporates paid less tax in November 22 versus November 21. The core sector data also showed that 6 out of the 8 sectors contracted compared to the October levels. And you know, October was the holiday month with Diwali. So again, you wonder, is there a problem? Now, are these one-offs? Again, on the contrary, we have good GST collections. So what is the forecast for growth in the year ahead in 2023? We have two economists joining us, Pranjul Bhandari, Chief India Economist, HSBC, and Devendra Pant, the Chief Economist at India Ratings. Pranjul and Mr. Pant, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Pranjul, first, your take on these two numbers. Am I worrying a little bit about something very small, both direct taxes and core sector?
Well, I think the headline is that we are seeing some gentle slowdown in the economy now after a very good, first quarter and a half of the last year. But don't get too negative here, because I know that in the month of November, tax growth looked a little weak. But the truth is that it's not great month after month. There's a lot of lumpiness there. And if you look at it in a seasonally adjusted way, things are not that bad as they look in a year-on-year basis. Actually, for the full year to date, direct tax growth has been about 24% year-on-year, which is a very strong number. Going ahead, though, there could be some slowdown. And I think the biggest driver of that slowdown will be the fact that nominal GDP growth is now slowing. In fact, it has already slowed from 27% in the first quarter to 16% in the second quarter, and is likely to slow further towards the 10% handle. And my sense is that's going to be the key driver of tax growth being a little softer than we saw a couple of months ago. But on the whole, the number is still quite strong. In fact, I would say that the government had a budget estimate of meeting a fiscal deficit target of 6.4% this year. And I think they are on track for meeting that, because overall tax revenues have been good.
Okay, no, I take your point on that, and I'll come back to revisit some of the numbers, Pranjul. Mr. Devendra Pant, good morning. What's your sense? You look at fiscal numbers closely. Is this just a one-off month, this November, where both corporate taxes and overall GTR, gross tax revenues, fell?
Mostly on on the same league as what Pranjul has just said. Yes, if we should be monitoring these numbers very closely. But rather than that, I'll look at more as April-November number, where we have seen close to 15.5% growth in gross tax revenue, which is 1.5 times of 9.6% what was used in the budget. But yes, we have to be very careful, because the second half, both the real growth is going to be lower than the first half, and inflation is going to be lower than the first half. So we were unlikely that we will see 15% kind of growth in gross tax revenue in rest of the period. So if the growth comes down to nominal somewhere around 10 odd or so, and with the buoyancy of 1.1, we see 10 odd % growth in the remaining period. And maybe, yeah.
No, I take a point, but the budget had taken, assumed only a 10% GTR, if I'm not mistaken.
9.6.
Yeah, the assumption overall has been that the government will collect at least 2 trillion rupees more than the amount assumed. We can still work with that assumption, right, Mr. Pant?
Yeah, it will be around maybe around 2.5 trillion or so, and that gives them some space for expenditure, which was in the first supplementary.
Okay.
Higher fertilizer subsidy, higher food subsidy. Yeah. And other such expenditure, which was not thought of at the time of budget, because the macro landscape has changed a lot since then.
Fair enough. Now, Pranjul, just a word on the core sector. Should we worry that 6 of the 8 sectors were lower in October compared to November? Or is this just that, overbuying in October and therefore the first month of the busy season is a little slack?
No, I think it's clear that some growth momentum is getting lost in the economy. And it's not just our economy, it's all the economies in the world. As in the core sector number, back in April, May, it was about 15% higher than pre-pandemic levels. Right now, it's only 7% higher than pre-pandemic levels. So there has been some slowdown, like sectors like steel and cement. But taking a broader look at this, my sense is that what's really going on is that in the last couple of months, investment growth was very strong. In fact, I would argue investment has been stronger than consumption over the last couple of months. But now investment is beginning to slow as well. And the big reason for this is that a lot of investment was replacement capex. The fact that companies hadn't done any capex for 2-3 pandemic years, and a lot of the wear and tear replacement capex got lumped up. We actually see it very clearly if you see the difference between gross investment and net investment. The difference is the depreciation capex, which had really shot up. But depreciation and replacement capex, by definition, is something that doesn't stay high forever. Once it's sort of done, it slows down. And I think we are seeing that now, that the replacement capex that was holding strong for a couple of months is now running its course. And I think all of this will start becoming more and more evident in the real GDP growth numbers that we see in the next couple of quarters.
But can't the government be a counterweight? Mr. Pant, that question to you, since you track government finances closely. The capex figure that comes in the CGA, in the central government accounts, has been good. They have done about over 60% of the full year, which is what you would do April to November. As well, the talk, and I didn't look at the number, is that the states have started spending since October. Your thoughts, will government capex provide a good counterweight?
Well, if you look at the general government, center state put together, their portion in overall investment is as low as 12%. So yes, government can give a push. They can make investment in those sectors which attracts private investment, and that's what is being happening, like the government investment in infra. But ultimately, if you are looking at a sustained capex cycle, which has happened somewhere in beginning of this century, or sustained in say 10% investment growth, then unless our demand picks up.
Okay.
And right now the situation is, even if there is corporate balance sheets are better, banks' balance sheets are better to fund those capex. But unless the demand improves in the economy, it is unlikely that we will have a sustained high investment growth in the economy across all sectors. We'll continue to see the kind of situation we have, the infrastructure sector, green energy, renewable. You will continue to see investment in airports, ports, and roads, etc., etc. But unless our demand continue to grow at 7-8% or 9%, it is unlikely that we will see a sustained investment growth revival in the economy. And the global situation is again one of the hurdle, because the global demand is unlikely to be what it was in 2022.
So both of you agree that we are not seeing a capex cycle take off. We are still waiting for it, right, Pranjul?
Yes, I think so. As in, it's very good to see that the central government continues to do a lot of capex. In fact, year to date this year, capex has risen 63% year on year. It's very strong. But the problem is, because the state has not really started doing capex, and the public sector enterprises sort of remain a bit lackluster. If you add up the entire public sector, which is central government, state government, and PSCs, the capex push overall is not very strong. And I think this is something we have to think about. I think the big fiscal challenge going ahead would be, will the states do capex in the next fiscal year? I think that's going to be a big question for the next couple of months, because states are taking away a lot of what the central government is doing in terms of the capex push. And then if you think about private sector capex, I think the stage is set for a takeoff. Bank balance sheets, corporate bank balance sheets are in a very good situation at this point. But this is a very volatile economic situation, with volatile commodity prices, inflation all over the place, hard to get a good handle on growth forecasts. In this kind of situation, private capex doesn't really thrive. So I think we'll just have to wait for the global economy to stabilize before we start seeing private sector capex really take off in the Indian economy.
Yeah, actually, we just had a couple of industrialists speak to us, Blue Star as well as Shree Cement. Both of them are speaking about excellent demand. I mean, double-digit, 10 to 15%. But it's quite possible that it is the premium sector. And, that need not necessarily contradict what you are seeing in terms of mass demand not picking up. Now, for the big question I wanted to ask you, on Friday, we are going to get the first advance estimates for next year's GDP. Any guesses, Pranjul, on what might be the real and nominal GDP that the NSO may put out?
Well, for FY24, our sense is that real GDP growth should be in the 5.5% to 6% handle. 6% is India's potential growth. It will be just under potential growth because the global economy is very fragile at this point. In terms of nominal GDP growth, we are expecting a number around 9.5%, just under 10. So FY23 nominal GDP growth was 15. That coming down to under 10, to around 9.5. That will be a very big challenge for the central government because it's difficult to consolidate your fiscal excesses, bring it down at a time when nominal GDP is slowing. The big reason for the nominal GDP growth slowing from 15 to 9.5 is not just a real GDP growth slowing, but also the fact that inflation, GDP deflator is slowing.
Fair point. Your number, out of time actually, Mr. Pant, but what would your number be for next year? Real and nominal that we'll hear from NSO?
I doubt whether they will talk about FY24. They will talk about FY23, I believe.
No, they will give the advance estimates because the budget will be based on it. So,
not for 24. 24 first GDP number will be the nominal GDP in the budget.
Okay, and what is it that you're expecting?
Again, it will be somewhere around 9.5% to 10% nominal GDP because, as Pranjul said, don't want to repeat it. The potential growth, which used to be around 8%, has come down gradually, now around 6% or so. Okay. On top of it, when we are looking at the global worries and the global demand weakening, so most likely it will be somewhere around in the budget 9.5% to 10% kind of nominal GDP growth.
Okay. We'll leave it at that. We will know on February 1st, if not on Jan 6th, what is the estimated nominal GDP growth. Pranjul Bhandari, Devendra Pant, thank you very much for joining us. To wrap up on Bazaar, Chartbusters up next.